Hey, everybody, and welcome to another one of these episodes of these Trinity of Fairview Media and Testimonies. We are just excited to be here today. I'm with a dear brother again. We've rolled out a couple of these at this point, Mr. Kevin Hughes, with these powerful stories, powerful testimonies, very interesting moments in life that you can sometimes not understand the reasoning behind it. But as Kevin has so eloquently described in the past couple of episodes, is that the Lord is in it all, and that no matter what you're going through, He is there with us. And another very pertinent story that is affecting the lives of many today that we're going to be talking about is the story that Kevin will be sharing, and it is a heartbreaking story of human trafficking. This is an area of life, a thing that people are doing nowadays, and it is horrible, and it is affecting millions of people worldwide. And the reality of Kevin's story is that it is sometimes right around the corner, and we just are not paying much attention to it. And I want to allude to Kevin to share that story today. But before I let him do that, I wanted to read some statistics on this idea of human trafficking. Like Kevin and I were just talking before we started this podcast, was I feel like, and I think he agrees, there's not enough awareness out there in today's day and age. There's not enough people that know about this. There's not enough individuals who are informed. So I feel just as strongly as he does in the realm of mental health awareness, of suicidal ideation, of human trafficking, all these things. We need to turn our eyes to it, and we can't ignore it any longer because it's become a problem. And human trafficking statistics reveal a very sad reality for many individuals. Behind every statistic is a person. It's someone's mother, it's someone's father, brother, or sister. And some of these statistics provide a lot of insight into the severity of this issue. One of these was there are 49.6 million people in modern slavery worldwide, and 35% of those are children. And sex trafficking is the most common type. And it was one of these other statistics said that there were 88 million child sexual abuse material files reported to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children in 2022. So this is a huge industry, as much as I hate to say that word, but it really is an industry. And it's the second most profitable illegal industry in the U.S. at $150 billion in revenue. And that's what the statistics said from UNICEF. It's hard to believe, Kevin. It's a terrible thing.
To your point, it's not always quite frankly, it's not actually the who you think is being trafficked is not really who is being trafficked. It literally can happen to anybody, and
Yeah.
and my story is evidence of that fact. I forgot the number when this first happened, and I knew when my daughter was saved, by the SWAT team, that at some point I had to share the story. And it's taken me a long time to, have the courage to do it, number one. Number two, to kind of wrap my brain around, how it needed to be put out there. But I've known for a while that, my story was special. And I know there's a lot of stories that don't end, with literally the child that was involved in this story is on my couch right now on her day off from work. And they don't end that way. There's a lot of stories that end, in a very negative way where the child is never seen again. Some of the things I've learned through this process on, how they determine how they're going to use the child are terrifying. And in the period of time that the front people have them, they're trying to figure out is there a family support network that'll turn over every stone and continue to look for them, and if that's the case, most of them end up being shipped overseas and used up. If they don't feel like they have a life at home and nobody really cares about them to look for them, they use them up here, and that's that's a sad way to think about a human being, living their life. It is modern day slavery. It is very prevalent. And you probably, everybody that hears this has probably come across somebody in person that's being trafficked, and they just don't know how to tell you I'm in trouble, and communicate that. It's um, that's part of what I want to do here is to bring awareness to how to identify it. See something, do something, or see something, say something, whatever you want to do. But
Absolutely.
it's a scary situation, and I think as we go down this path over the next few weeks, we're going to get into a lot of subjects, and I'm probably going to step on some toes, and that's okay. If I step on a toe and you feel some pain, then maybe you need to do some introspective and look at how you're handling things at home. And I hope and pray that nobody takes anything I say personal, because I'm going to open myself up for judgment. I feel like that this is a situation where I'm going to admit my faults and flaws, and the good, the bad, the ugly, because that all played a part in this. And it's something that, it's not intentional, but it's just part of modern life. And I need people to hear, where I feel like I contributed to this, and look at their lives and say, wow, I'm doing the same thing. And maybe make some changes and just prevent one. That's kind of, when we did the other two podcasts, one person, if that touches one person, reliving those, the death of my son and those experiences are worth it to keep those wounds open to help other people. So that's
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that this really ties in really well to a lot of what we're doing in the ministries behind Be the Man. The podcast that Pastor Stacy and I do, talking about parenting, talking about being the man, and I think that's like you alluded to, we're going to go down into multiple aspects of this story, multiple ways around why this happened, and the role of technology in human trafficking, the role of social media, those kinds of things. And I think that's kind of our goal, is for people to, one, be aware, for people to, two, to make sure that they are paying attention and guiding their kids in the right way. And also just, and like you said, ministering to, if it's that one person, that one person is worth the world. And I can already tell you from the other podcast, we've had multiple people already listening into the link we have just shared out. I've had somebody already message me not too long ago and just say they were touched by the story. And that's the goal of what we've been doing, and we'll continue to do that. So in today's introductory episode, I think it would be, it'd be very good for us to look at your story. I feel like, we may not even get through all of the story, but whatever, I think to kind of start it out and to see, there's so many aspects to this story, and I can't wait to dive into the social media and the technology and all that stuff, because there's so much to unpack there. But I just want to see what you kind of got in your mind about what happened initially in that story, and how, as parents and as adults and people and men and women in this world, a lot of times what we see in this human trafficking realm is it's right around the corner. I mean, it's in your hometown, and we just don't know it. We just don't see it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess September 11th, 2015, woke up to a phone call that my youngest daughter, my second youngest daughter, had run away, and did not at that time have any sense of the gravity of the situation. She had run away a couple times before that. She had, tried to kill herself a couple times, and it was, just a situation that, as we got into that. It didn't end like the other ones. The other two times we found her very quickly. She was local. And this time, it turns out there needed to be some work of God involved here that, to save her, that things that, when I tell this story, it's really not a joke, but, I ask people, have you seen the movie Taken? And people frequently, yeah, I've seen that. Well, I lived it in a different form. I didn't go out and shoot guys and those kind of things, and
Right.
Liam Neeson anybody, but I certainly, it's funny how they call it predictive programming, but it's certainly not coincidental that a lot of what we consume in the movies and through social media play out in real life.
Absolutely.
Very closely to to how the movie portrays it, and that's kind of what happened here. I mean, we Amber had run away, and she had run away with a young lady that she had met after one of her suicide attempts in the hospital, and
Wow.
they try to tell you to keep those kids away from each other, but in today's world, that's pretty hard to do. And
Yeah.
the reason they want you to keep them away from each other is they're not any help to one another. No matter how much they tell you, hey, after I get out of here, so and so's my support network. They're not. They're an anchor, and so that was this situation. This other young lady had actually been trafficked before. She was a teenage prostitute, as we learned over the course of the story, for a local gym owner here in our hometown. And not only had she been used as a teenage prostitute, she'd been used as a drug mule. And so, she was, in that world. Their plan and intent was to drag my daughter into that world with them. The human trafficking story that Amber ended up in wasn't the original plan. It kind of was what happened and bifurcated out of when their plan got blown up. The man that owned the gym, gave them some money and a burner phone, and they were supposed to lay low close by, and then he was gonna pick them both up. And the original plan was to take them to Florida, where they were gonna reveal their plan and hey, live this life with us and make all this money or whatever he was going to do. That was the original plan. Well, that's not at all what happened. As it turned out, the place that they went to lay low didn't want to harbor runaways, and so they kicked them out. And they used the money they had given them to pay one of my daughter's friends to take them to Myrtle Beach. And I don't want to scare anybody, but as I learned in discussions with the FBI human trafficking task force and the North Carolina SBI and all the different law enforcement agencies that eventually got involved in this, Myrtle Beach is actually one of the top human trafficking points in the United States. And it has to do with its location between two ports in Wilmington and Charleston. So they can, get them out of the country if they determine they need to do that. It's close to Charleston, which has a, majority female college in the College of Charleston. It's close to the University of North Carolina at Wilmington. They about statistically 80% of the children or people or young adults that get caught up in this are runaways. They run away from something, but there are 15, 16% that are targeted. They're snatched, and just like in the movie, there's a clean, good, there's a person on the front that doesn't, mean them any harm. They buy them alcohol and get them made up and harbor them while they're negotiating a sale. And so, they that all happened when they got to Myrtle Beach. They went to Myrtle Beach, and the other young lady, who she had an affection and affinity for older men, and they used the burner phone to get on the internet and post an ad on I call it a sugar daddy website. And the person that picked them up was not friendly, as it turned out. It was a European bloc. So I'm going to leave that there because I'm not sure of 100% of the nationality, but European bloc crime ring.
Yeah.
And, that's who befriended them. And so, we, the first day we wandered around, and with my background in the military and survival training and those kind of things, I'm trained to not get caught. And so I kind of reverse engineered, what would I have done if I left this house, and how would I have gotten out of here? And so, I went out and ended up running into a couple of security cameras, which, gave us, some tips, and found a camera on the back of a local business that we were able to see a vehicle that drove up and see him walking up the road. But the God side of this is pretty incredible. As we go down this road, there are 5, maybe 6 things. I'd have to list them out to be specific, that if any one of those events don't happen exactly, and I mean exactly, the way they happen in this story, she's gone. The day she was rescued by the SWAT team, the local police in Myrtle Beach told me that in fact she had been sold.
Wow.
They estimated $12,000 to $15,000 is what she had been sold for, and that they felt like that she was going to leave the country the next day, and that lined up with the actual events, and that the man that had picked them up had him staying in a really nice condo there on the beach, and
Right.
and he told him, hey, I got to go out of town on business for a while, but you can stay here. And so that's the point where the good guys, just like in the movie, leaves and probably drugs them, and the bad guys come in and take them and do what they're going to do with them. But it was a tough 3 days. I mean, I didn't know what was really going on probably until the second day, and I kind of had an idea on. She ran away, Thursday night, and Friday, spent a lot of time with the local police because of that girl's past. The local police in the district that this happened in didn't really want to do a lot. This girl had been down this road, the other girl, with him multiple times. I mean, and she always came back. So they didn't have any sense of, oh, we got to do something now, because of this girl's history, which was not a good thing. And so they, I think it was Friday evening, or they said, well, we'll give it 48 hours and this will probably resolve itself. Well, I didn't accept that. I didn't feel good about the way they were behaving, and so I, at the request of or suggestion of one of my sisters, reached out to a friend of mine that I had worked with in youth prior to getting divorced. And I probably hadn't talked to this guy in, it's probably been 12, 13 years at this point.
Wow.
We had been really close. As we go through this, I'll talk about how I had fallen away and fallen victim to the world, and, had done, kind of, moved away from the church and God, and was, living a very, what I thought, fulfilling life, but it was the devil tricking me into thinking I had things, the bull by the horns, but, I really was, in complete chaos. And, but in spite of that, in this moment, I reached out to my friend and said, hey, not getting a lot of good vibes here, can you help me? And he was a very senior person in the North Carolina SBI. And he said, absolutely, I'll give you a couple agents to put on it. And so that's miracle number one. I tell people, just like I said in that other podcast, God's plan is perfect.
Yeah.
It is. We live a life of free will. We get to pick and choose our paths. But just in spite of whatever path we choose, good or bad, he will and can make the best of each situation if we allow him to do so. That's, people get, and I myself have been quite confused with, if God is in complete control and he knows everything that you're going to do and everything that happens to you, how is there any free choice? Well, it's total free choice. He just, I don't know that his plan changes. He's just so far ahead. He knows the decisions you're going to make, and when you make a bad one, he can use them to to his glory. And so, this story, we're gonna get into a lot of that. And the one thing that hadn't changed was how this individual felt about me as a human being, in spite of the path I had chosen, and he wanted to help me. And God had put him in my life in 1999. Wow. And this is 2015. And, it might be 98. And so, he puts a couple people on it, as we're going through the home, looking for clues. Because they were getting coached by the person that they had intended to be with, they left their cell phones behind because they didn't want to be tracked. And so, we're going through the girl's bedroom, and my wife just looks in the trash can randomly. This is like occurrence number 2, and there's a piece of aluminum foil, and it is, and I mean, this little tiny thing,
Wow.
like an inch and a half by a half inch, and if you've ever seen a burner phone, it's the foil wrapper off of a burner phone. And they had opened that phone that he had given them in the bedroom and thrown that piece of oil in the trash. And so gave us a serial number to the phone they were carrying.
Yeah.
And so we were able to activate the phone without them knowing it. And as I got into this, I learned about all the technology that law enforcement has. It's the same as the NSA has, and how they could literally track you to within about 3 feet. So, if they really want to find you, they'll triangulate and get in your phone and make it turn the geo settings on and off, on and off, on and off until they find you. You don't even know they're doing it, right? And so this piece of foil was a miracle, just like, the guy, that guy being in my life was planned. Well, that foil that was there. And so it probably was Saturday morning. I started getting a really uneasy feeling about things, and he called me. My buddy called me back and he said, "Hey man, we got a lead, but we missed him." I was like, "What do you mean you missed him?" He said, "Well, Facebook is incredibly hard to deal with from a legal standpoint when they want to be. I want to throw that out there as a caveat.
Yeah.
When they want to be,
yeah,
they're incredibly hard to deal with. Now, I'm not going to get into politics, and I won't. But the law enforcement agency that was involved has what's called administrative subpoena power, and so they don't have to go before a judge, which again was a blessing and a miracle, right? So they could literally go and issue a subpoena on their own without having to go before a magistrate, without having to go before a judge, and say, "Hey, here's this FISA warrant or whatever the thing's called. We want to access and ping this phone for this reason." They're allowed to do it one time, and they can only do it one time an hour, and they have to have a new subpoena every hour.
Wow.
And so in between the pings, they had missed them. They had gotten thrown out of that, what they thought was their safe house. They found where they had been, but they weren't there anymore.
Right.
They were on the move. And so, when that first thing happened, I got a really kind of uneasy feeling about where we were headed. And then, my wife and other kids, and we're out putting up, missing posters of their sister, which we were told later wasn't a great idea, and asked to take them down. And that was kind of my first red flag. Hey, why are they asking me to take down a missing poster? And we're like, oh. In my brain, because I'm in the military, or what had been, this was the year after I retired.
Yeah.
My brain started going, why would they not want a missing poster up? Oh, somebody's got them that probably will intend them harm if they see that. It could spook them. So, anyhow, we get into Saturday, and not a lot of positive leads. Saturday night, very sleepless night. Sunday comes around, and the local authorities, this is the irony and kind of I tell this part of the story just to tell you how people are wired, and they think there's something in it for them. But at the time, I was heavily involved in NASCAR at a very, very, very deep level. It's part of what kept me blinded. I had grown up a huge NASCAR fan. I've got NASCAR memorabilia in my office. I've still got friends in the sport, very deep in the sport. And I was a guy who did business with a large majority of the race car drivers. I'm not going to name drop because I don't want to detract, but I was in a circle of a who's who. And and people knew who I was when I walked around the garage. You still do, but Saturday night I missed a race. I wasn't there. I was normally at 20 events a year or more, and I got a text, wee hours in the morning on Sunday morning. from a close friend of mine who's a championship winning crew chief, and hey man, what's going on? And he knew about the struggles we had and the suicide attempts and the self harm and all
Right.
the other things we've gone through. And I had posted something at that point. I was on Twitter. I'm not there anymore, but the missing picture was on my Instagram and on my on my Twitter feed, and
Yeah.
he saw it and texted me and said, "Hey, what's going on?" And he said, "Are you up actually?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm up." So I think he called and said, "Hey man, what's happening?" He was waiting to get on the airplane to come home.
Yeah.
And 2 o'clock in the morning. And he said, "What can I do?" And I said, "Well, you've got a very large following. Repost it." And so he did. Well, the police department, who on Friday said, "We'll see you next week sometime," they weren't very interested. And I turned it over to the SBI.
Wow.
I showed up Sunday morning, knocking on the door at this other girl's house, and walk in and say, I thought, man, they found her. And they're like, "You didn't tell us who you were." And I'm like, "What? What do you mean who I am?" And they're like, "Man, we saw this tweet from NASCAR driver A, B, C. This thing had been within 30 minutes of my buddy posting it. Literally, everybody in the sport reposted it. So it got interacted with like 3 million times." Well, they had seen it. Their favorite driver had reposted it. And they realized, oh my goodness, this is our case.
Yeah.
So now they're there to help,
That's crazy.
You guys are so flipping shallow, get out of here. And so, anyhow, that day, they got some tips on Sunday. I got a call late that afternoon from my buddy, and he said, "Hey, can you get to Myrtle Beach?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm going." And I left at like 5 o'clock that night, 6 o'clock. Me and the other parents, they had picked up a hit at a vacation place that the other family went to frequently, and they felt like that she'd gone someplace comfortable, someplace where she knew her way around, and those kind of things. And so we were on our way down there. Well, while we're on our way down there, I get a call that they had seen him at a pizza parlor, and that they were going to go try to see if they were still there. And they missed him again.
Wow.
And but the guy that owned the pizza parlor was disturbed by the person that picked him up, to the point that he wrote down the license plate on the car that they got into, because it was so out of character. He was an older man, and here were these two literally 16-year-old girls, and he sees these two 16-year-old girls leave with this older man. It's like, something's wrong. They'd sat there all day. He said he knew they were runaways, and so it bothered him to the point that he wrote the license plate of the car down. That's another one of those throw that in the miracle bucket category, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because it was the lead that let us know who they were with. And I started getting really uneasy about it. Went down to the beach. Got a call on the way there that they'd missed them, at the pizza parlor. Got there, rode around, I went everywhere he told me not to go. I went there, right?
Yeah.
And I'm hunting my child, and so didn't sleep much that night. Got up the next morning. Went over to the pizza parlor, and I told not to go over there. And the description that I'd been given of the person that they got in the car with didn't match reality. And there was a reason for that. He was trying not to scare me. And so he had told me they needed to send an officer over to ID the person that they thought they were with. And by the time I got there, the officer hadn't been there. And I asked him if I could ID him for him. He said, sure. And so he texted me his picture, and it had his rap sheet. And I knew. That's the moment I knew that it was human trafficking. And I was like, this ain't going to end well. I just, the name, the rap sheet, everything, I said, she has been captured.
Wow.
And maybe not captured, but she's willingly left with somebody that intends her harm.
So
And
I just have one quick question. I was thinking about this in the midst of what you were saying. Was what like even early on? How did you like? Did you have this feeling that it was human trafficking? Like, was this something that you had thought about along, or
not really. It was, I thought she'd run away like she had before.
right?
And the moment it hit me that it was trafficking was when I saw that rap sheet.
Wow, wow,
When the
wow,
description that I was given on the way down, when he told me that, on the way down, he gave me a description of the person that they got in a car with. He didn't give me the right description of the car, but when I saw the picture, I was like, whoa. I called him and I was like, man,
yeah.
you
Hang
told
on a minute.
me what in the world? What's going on? He said, man, we'll talk about that later. Something to that effect. And then I said, they said it's him. I got very angry with the pizza parlor owner because he said he knew there were runaways, didn't call the cops.
Wow.
But I was grateful that he had gotten the license plate number.
Yeah.
And so he told me that they had identified the person. His front was that he was an allergist. He was a medical doctor, an allergist, partner
Wow.
in a clinic. So, I mean, when I say this is it's mainstream, it's mainstream. I mean,
Wow.
this guy's primary job that picked my daughter up and sold her, or was intending to sell her, was an allergist,
Yeah.
supposedly.
Yeah. It's very methodical. I mean, they planned this out.
Yeah, no, man, it's that's the terrifying part. Is it's not, and that's part of this, part of this awareness thing is it's not bad guys, boogeymen in masks.
Yeah.
It's people that seem very normal in their walk of life, but have a very deep, dark seated business that they're involved in. And this is example A, you
Yeah.
know. And so when I said earlier, I will unequivocally guarantee that anybody who hears this, yourself included, has at some way interacted with somebody who is either being trafficked or is trafficking somebody and you just didn't know it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Didn't know
Wow.
it. Don't know what to look for. I didn't know what I knew enough to know when I saw that rap sheet and to put the circumstances with the rap sheet what I was dealing with. But that's it. I mean, honestly, what do you do then? You pray.
Wow.
You pray.
And I think that's absolutely the aim of what we're after here. And, I want to kind of leave I want to leave the people out there with a little bit of a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Obviously the end result, she is alive and well found, but I know there's a lot more details to that story. There's a lot.
There's so much. I mean, we'll backtrack and get really into the weeds. Like I said, this isn't a one and done here. There is so much to talk
Yeah.
about. How did I get distracted? I'm a kid, grew up in the South watching NASCAR as a child, and the devil knew that. That's the scary part about the devil is he knows all your weaknesses and uses what you perceive as your needs,
Yep.
whether it's for self-identity or medals and awards and trophies or money or houses or cars or jewelry or whatever your weakness is. He knows that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
for a kid who grew up his whole life admiring guys that went fast and turned left on Sunday afternoon, for me to be literally dead in the middle as somebody they all knew, not as a stranger, but as somebody that walk up and shake hands, pat me on the back. I socialized with them. I was, going to their charity events and all this stuff, but it blinded me from my duties as a parent.
Yeah. Wow.
Would
Yeah. Well, would you say that the primary, of what a lot of people seem to ignore, the primary goal of what we're after here is through your story is so that way people they can help save a life. They can be aware because, even for me, I'll go ahead and I'll lay it out. I don't know a whole lot about it. I have not really been, informed enough. Even ever since I've discussed this with you, I've done research, tried to get my bearings, especially working in youth ministry. Like I want to know these things, but the reality is a lot of people don't have that background. A lot of people don't know what's been going on. And I mean, I don't think your story's uncommon of being blindsided. I know there's a lot of people that I could never imagine that type of, that's like a movie, man. You're living out a scenario that seems like it was in a movie, but people can be so easily blindsided and they just don't have the information.
No, that's the intent. I mean, there's a lot of rabbit holes to go down here. I've got, you know, like I said, before Kevin passed away, we had recorded a video that's nearly 2 hours long, start to finish.
Yeah.
It was kind of our foundation of, hey, here's the whole project. How do we use that? And I think, again, God's time, God's way, God's plan, right? This platform gives us the ability to have communication and conversation around things that hopefully people will, look at and say, man, I need to dig into that. And then, my goal is to provide with, people with as much information as I can provide them and back that information up with my real life situation. Here's how this fits in my story.
Yeah.
To let them go, wow, am I doing that?
Yeah.
Do I really have my finger on, what my child is involved in and what's out there that the devil's using to attack them? And that's the only way you can look at it. Social media is designed by Satan, in my opinion. We're going to use it, again, to God's glory, right? We're going to use it to flip it on his head.
Really?
But at its core, it's not designed to be good. It's just not. It's designed to be addictive. And we're going to use it for God's glory, and that's what I pray.
Yeah, and there's in this vein specifically, I think that's a really good way to look at it. Is that there are so many things out there that can be a distraction, and social media is one of those things that is not only a distraction, but it's a tool of the enemy. It can be the playground for the devil to work in, and a lot of times we seem to ignore that. And I think even for the youth, I just read this other statistic not too long ago that I think it was like 1 in 3 children under the age of 5 have already been exposed to social media in some way or another. And it's
my granddaughter is 5 years old. She can navigate an iPad better than I can.
Yeah, and it's the reality. I mean, really.
I'm not a tech dummy. I'm pretty sharp, but so to that point, we have to arm these parents with the tools to prevent the enemy from entering their child's life and their brain through those type means, right? Yeah. I mean, and if you need any validation to what you just said, walk through a restaurant. Next time you go to dinner, anybody out there listening to this, walk through a restaurant or walk through a shopping mall or whatever and count the number of people who are glued.
Yep.
They're not talking to each other. They're not interacting. They're interacting with what's on the other end of that phone.
Yeah,
that app.
Yep. And within the blink of an eye, I mean, you can be connected to anybody in the world. And
it's like that.
That's the scary reality.
That's the terrifying part. And you don't know who's really on the other end.
Yep. It's true.
That's the scary part. That's the scary part. And that's the stuff we're going to get into. We'll finish the story, next week and, get into that. And then we'll just start picking subjects. And if people who see this, if we put this out there, they want us to go into a specific area, we'll do it.
Absolutely.
I have no authorship or pride in authorship in this. I just have a message to share, and I want to do what God wants me to do.
That's awesome. And, guys out there, guys that you're listening to this, picking this up, share this out. And if you have a question or a comment, I always leave underneath the video or underneath the podcast on Spotify, or if you're on YouTube, whatever you're picking this up on, there's a little comment box. So feel free to ask myself or Kevin questions. I know that we'd be happy to answer those. And we always love to hear feedback. Yeah. So Kevin, you got anything else to leave them with?
No, I don't. I'm excited and finally ready to get this journey underway.
Amen. All right, guys, y'all share this out, and we'll keep up with this. We got many more things to come, and there's a lot of different veins of this. There's a lot of different avenues, but the main thing we're trying to get across here is, I mean, one, it's awareness, two, it's guidance, and three, it's just sharing out the story that the Lord's impressed, and we just want to do it for God's glory. So you guys tune in next week. We'll catch you then.
Amen.